Hello, FloodGate family. Thank you so much for joining and tuning in to this month's Leadership Live. And I am absolutely ecstatic to have Todd Frese, who's Executive Vice President for Medical, join us here to share, really his extensive experience, his lessons learned, and what maybe not to do, all those things. As always, guys, we're going to be asking a lot of questions, but there's some things I know you're going to want to ask. Just comment below. As we're going through, comment below. At the end, we're going to pick a few of those comments and some of those questions, and Todd will ask. And if we miss something, we'll try to respond through that feed. So remember to do that. But Todd, I've had the opportunity to know you for the last couple of years, but I know not everyone's so lucky. So tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us a little bit about Merit as well. We'd love to learn about.
Yeah. So, and total privilege and pleasure to be on here with you, Joe. You guys do a great job at FloodGate. And just personally, real quickly, so based out of Chicago, been married to my college sweetheart for a little bit over 30 years. We've got 3 amazing boys, the youngest of which is a senior in high school. So he's doing the college dance right now. So kind of working through that. I've been in the industry. It's frightening, but it'll be 30 years in April of next year. I'm a crusty veteran of the industry, and I've worked for 4 amazing companies. A lot of the names have changed because of acquisitions and that type of thing. But I worked for what became Covidian for 9 years in a couple of commercial roles. Then went to Olympus, one of the best engineering and endoscopy companies on the planet. Did pretty much every commercial role possible. Then went to another amazing company, C.R. Bard, for a couple of years, right before they were being acquired by Becton Dickinson, late 2017, and then went to Merit in 2017. And I've been here for basically a little bit over 5 years. I've got had responsibility for the last 5 years for the U.S. Most of the sales force is about a $500 million in revenue. It's a publicly traded company. The CEO is the founder of the organization, Fred Lampropoulos, true visionary in the industry. It's amazing, an amazing, very dynamic organization, and more than happy to share any additional details on Merit as well. So.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. It's a great company. You guys are doing some really interesting things in the marketplace and continue to expand. So that's under your leadership. So a lot to do. Now, speaking about leadership, right? You've been a leader for how many years now in this industry? You're 30 years?
Yeah, and I probably 2 years as a salesperson, and then went into like management capacities. So yeah, it's been I'm crusty.
Yeah, 20 years.
We're back to that again.
So I think you're definitely well poised to answer this question. What are the key attributes do you think make a good leader in this unique med device space?
Yeah, and you know what? I don't think it's really like industry specific. I mean, just my personal opinion. And I think also there's certain things that regardless of the position that you're in an organization are must haves as far as leadership. And then I think, if you're a CEO of a company versus a frontline sales manager, a little bit different, obviously, in terms of the jobs. But, to me, the first thing that comes to mind, regardless of the position you're in, and quite honestly, you can be a leader and not have someone reporting into you. And this still comes into play, and that is integrity. So it's a person that is going to do, they're going to do everything they can to do the right thing, regardless of what the circumstances are. And sometimes that can be challenging, which kind of takes me to another point. And that is, you're not always going to make popular decisions, right? So I think leaders have to be able to have the difficult conversations respectfully. They have to be able to make different decisions. A couple of minutes ago, you and I were talking about something that took place, whether it's like a reduction in force. Those are awful things, right, for the people that are involved. But sometimes, unfortunately, they're necessary. So that's an important piece. I would also say communication. I think it's hard to be an effective leader if you're not a pretty solid communicator, and whether that's laying out expectations for a team of people and kind of painting the vision and trying to motivate people through that communication. So those are, 3 kind of what I would say like non-negotiables to me. And then I think there's just a lot of other stuff, right? Hopefully if people don't always agree with the decisions that you're making, because sometimes again, they're not popular, Hopefully they trust you. Hopefully they respect you. And I think also it's somebody that brings a lot of passion to what they're doing, regardless of the role. And I think a person that brings a lot of energy, right? Are you the person that walks into a room and you kind of suck the air out of the room, or are you a person that walks into a room and you elevate, everybody's, performance. So those are, it's a long list, right? Books, but
it makes total sense. I mean, you gotta have that integrity, get that trust you're talking about. You got to be able to hold the accountability, because at the end of the day, a leader is helping people get where they want to be. And some of that is hold them accountable to, the things that we don't always want to do at that right time. Right.
Things you don't want to hear. Right. There's plenty of weaknesses that I have. Sometimes it's not fun to hear about those things, but if I'm going to improve, I've got to hear them. So
yeah, that's right. And you got to have the great communication to do it. Now you've been doing it 28 years, so I'm sure you haven't hit the cover off the ball on every single swing. So there's a lot of people that would love to learn the lessons, as we call them, lessons that you might have learned and can share so they don't step on that same landmine.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. That's a great question. I'm gonna start answering that asking that during interviews. Probably the biggest thing for me, and I think it's one of those things where you learn the lesson the hard way. You knew it, but you learned it the hard way because you didn't think you were doing that type of behavior. And honestly, the biggest thing for me, hands down, was work-life balance, because it can have a significant negative impact on your family. My wife and I, we went to Hong Kong right after college. Basically, I was working for an international marketing company. I had no clue at what I was doing. I was doing strategic marketing. I was a psychology major, right? And I was pretty much working 7 days a week, 18 hours a day. Nice guy, left my wife completely abandoned for the most part in our apartment in Hong Kong. She didn't know anybody clearly. Fast forward, come back to the States. And my wife would tell me, hey, you work too much, right? And I'm like, oh, you exaggerate. Well, we have a three-year-old with our oldest at this point in time. I walk in the front door, it was a Friday night. I greet my son who's, playing with dinosaurs, whatever he was playing with, and I got nothing back from him, right? So I'm like, well, that nice greeting. Probably went into my office and started working. My father-in-law came over 15 minutes late, and my son went crazy with excitement, right? And that was a really eye-opening experience for me. I'm like, you know what? I kept telling my wife that she exaggerates, but with my son, there was no hidden agendas. It was, what I was putting into him, which apparently wasn't much, was coming back at me with not much. And that was that was a tough lesson I get actually chills thinking about it right now, to learn. And I think about it almost every single day. I'm going to Salt Lake City over the weekend, missing some personal stuff. I do everything I can to try to strike that work-life balance for the benefit of my family, for the benefit of the organization. But it's extremely difficult to do, at least for me. And that was hands down the biggest eye opener for me.
Wow, that's a powerful story. Yeah, keeping that balance. I've heard that 5 F's. Keeping that balance going. I think also for your team, right, is that keeps them being able to run the marathon, not just sprints, right? Because
for your health, and just for everything, right? The health of your family, the health of what you're more productive. I think if you're getting some downtime, we all know that, right? But again, doing it isn't always easy.
That's a great suggestion. Now, I'm sure you've had some over your team. There's high performers, right? That are up and coming. And how do you what's the best way to develop those?
Yeah, I think there's two parts to it. And I think part of it is a company, do they have like a first-rate training and development, I'll call it development department? A lot of companies don't have those resources, right? We're really good at onboarding people, but when it comes to more like the long-term development, it's not something we focused on historically, being a relatively small company and always hiring people with 20 to 30 years of experience, right? So I think at the end of the day for me, and I'm super passionate about this, and I'll just use like frontline managers and sales managers and territory managers as the example. It's constantly trying to create teaching moments for the people that report into you, right? Those mentoring moments. And I think you need, and I don't want to confuse this with bureaucracy, but you need, I'll call it systems in place, whether it's annual performance reviews and you're having conversations throughout the course of the year that relates back to that, one-off event where you're doing the annual review. You're doing business reviews with your folks in terms of, okay, January, how are we going to make you successful for 2023? And then I think you're breaking down, and again, it's the system or the process that you have in place to create those teaching moments. So it's quarterly reviews to kind of do a sanity check on what you set out to do at the beginning of the year. There's the monthly forecasting. There's the monthly pipeline reviews to make sure that a salesperson really understands what's required of that hospital to convert to your products. Are their strategies sound? It's not about one thing, but it's about creating those moments.
Yeah.
So sometimes they're really strong teaching moments, and you're developing people over the course of time. So I've always said this, I always will say this, the most important person, can't speak for other industries, but in med device is the regional sales manager, regional vice president, whatever you call them, because they shape and mold the behavior and manage the emotions of the masses. And I think it's really that kind of engagement from your frontline managers or anyone that has people responsibility to engage with their folks to really develop them day in and day out is absolutely critical.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And I like the way you say, create those moments, right? Schedule those moments, whatever you call them, but have them, stay consistent. And I know one of the, talk about lessons learned is that would be maybe the meeting I'd sacrifice if a customer meeting came up. And reality is, if you think about it, you're going to make more of an impact by maintaining and developing your people than by taking that additional customer call as a leader, right?
Yeah, it's not urgent, but it's high leverage, high impact is exactly what that is. And we'll go back to the work-life balance. To have quality time with your kids, for example, or your family, you've got to have the quantity, because you can't create the quality. That comes with spending time, right? So the same thing with people that report into you, for example. You have a lot of time trying to create those teaching moments, and then sometimes there's the beauty of it, and other times it's just a run-of-the-mill conversation. But that's okay. You have to do that.
Yeah, no, it's great examples how to develop some high performers. Now, obviously, this is something near and dear to my heart. How do you find them, right? How do you evaluate and make sure they're right for your organization? What's working?
Yeah. So first of all, and shameless plug for FloodGate, because probably 90%. Well, and truth,
we'll take it.
You know this, but probably 90% of the people that we hire in the United States are coming from FloodGate. It started with our oncology business that was an acquisition by the name of Ciana. They introduced us, and I was very familiar with FloodGate, but they introduced Merit to FloodGate. And then given the amazing job that FloodGate was doing, it expanded across our organization. So I would say probably 90% of the people that we hire, field-based people, are coming through FloodGate. And why is that important? Because we have internal recruiters. They don't have the capabilities, nor the time, nor the systems, nor the relationships with all these different amazing salespeople that we want to tap into, right? So basically finding them is through FloodGate. Mm-hmm. You bring what you believe are the best qualified candidates for the specific sales force that we're interviewing for. You're also, and you and I've talked about this, you're also looking at trying to find the best cultural match. So that's a massive part of it, right? But that's the beginning for me as a hiring manager. So you put 5 people in front of me, 8 people in front of me, whatever it is. And then my process starts, which is the evaluation to do the sanity check against what you're seeing, right? So starts with the screening interviews, goes into a full-blown, 2-3 hour type of, in-depth interview. In the ideal world, we're putting that person out in the field. If they're a salesperson, riding with someone else so they can see it firsthand what that job's all about, and also find out where is Merit, phenomenal, where is Merit maybe a little bit shaky on certain things. We all have our weaknesses. Same thing with companies. You want that person to understand exactly the environment that they're going to be transitioning into if they make the move. So it's that two-way street. I always bring people back for yet another interview and talk about what they saw in the field. I typically will have them present to me on our products to see what their presentation skills look like. Long story short, it's all about them revealing who they are and us revealing who we are to make sure that the skills are there and the cultural fit is there. Because I've met many people, interviewed many people that skill set wise knock it out of the park, right? But from a cultural perspective, I think there was a little bit of concern because that person can come on board, they can have success, but they're not going to be around for 2, 5, 10, 20 years if the cultural fit is not there. So I'm a big process guy. So you give me the people that you think are the right fit for Merit, and then I'm going to, if I'm hiring them, I'm going to go through that process, myself. And I'm a true believer in not everything that Jack Welch, said, but he said hire slow, right? And I do believe in that. Make sure that you're revealing yourself to the candidate and the candidate is revealing themselves to the organization. And it's a match kind of made in heaven type of thing. Knock on wood.
That's awesome. Yeah. And what I kind of heard you, have a good way, whether it's FloodGate or another way, to really get that best quality candidates funneled in to that hiring manager in a selected way. So they're not spread out trying to do it. They have to evaluate. But then also when you're doing the evaluate process, have a process.
Yeah.
Right?
If you skip the process, if you kind of pull the ripcord on the process, that's when people leave 6 months after they started. Yeah. You've had it, right? Or a year after they started, and it wasn't a good fit. And I will come back to the importance of the recruiter, because where I personally, back in the day being a frontline manager, I went to the same recruiter over and over because they knew what I was looking for and what my expectations were. They understood the skill set that was required. And again, the cultural piece of it, still up to me to, go through the interview process, but I went back to the same person, 2 people over and over and over, depending on the geography. The recruiter, critical.
Awesome. No, that's great. Great suggestions. And I do keeping that process and getting to that end is crucial. So now we've got a lot of people listening or will be listening, that want to be, where you are in 28 years, and growing. So how do they get tapped? How do they get noticed? What have you seen? What would you recommend?
Yeah. You know what? No one is going to manage their career better than you, Joe, for your career.
Yeah.
I'm the person that's going to do the best job of managing my career. And the reason I say that is it's not to absolve a company from their responsibility for identifying talent, developing talent. That's absolutely critical, right? And we have, a piece of our annual performance reviews that talk to career aspirations, right? To make sure we don't gloss over that. But I said this literally, it was almost 2 years ago to the day. We were on an all sales conference call, and I was reading an exit interview with a person that had left the company. And they said in the exit interview, they were leaving because there was no upward, mobility, no upward, opportunities for advancement. I called the manager. I'm like, did you know this person wanted to do whatever they wanted to do? Called the person. I said, I didn't know. And they said, we never said anything. So as I said 2 years ago on this all sales conference call, if you want to get into a leadership capacity, I don't care what the role is, if it's outside of what you're doing right now, raise your hand. Let that be known, and make sure that your manager is helping put together a development plan specifically for you. So when the opportunity for the leadership role, for example, comes about in 8 months, 18 months, whatever it is, you've had pretty much every single box that's been checked. You've become a regional trainer. You've been involved in interview processes. You've done business reviews with integrated delivery networks. You're ready, and you've separated yourself from the competition. And I can give you countless examples. We have a phenomenal leader, Amy Nelson, who just got promoted. She was a top salesperson for us in Dallas after raising her hand and also getting paired with some mentors. She was the ideal candidate. When a person retired, she stepped in, and she will do an incredible job, but she raised her hand and she managed her career and made sure the company was helping her manage her career.
Right. Yeah, no, that's amazing. It is your responsibility to raise your hand, set the plan, work through it, lean in, So, and I've heard other suggestions of people, taking initiative on things they know that needs to get done. They don't say it's not my job. And by the way, great leaders, that's never their attitude, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, because I've seen there's an open regional vice president position, whatever it is. And all of a sudden people come out of the woodwork and it's like, well, where you been? And then you have the person that I was describing that for 18 months has connected to numerous mentors. She's been doing all these different things, or he or she, all these different things. And there wasn't even, we go through the interview process, we owe it to the other people, but they separated themselves and they take that next position.
Yeah, great suggestion. As a couple more questions, but if you have questions, remember to post them down below. I'm going to take them here in just a moment. So Todd, got a fun one here for you.
Yeah.
Your favorite superhero. All right, and why?
Yeah. Okay. This is dangerous. So I'm going to give you two because I think the first Marvel movie I saw was Iron Man. So I mentioned my youngest, who's a senior in high school, for 10 years, where it was appropriate as far as ratings. We would go to all the Marvel movies together. So first night, every single time for 10 plus years.
Nice.
For the pandemic. I think the first Marvel movie I saw, like in the last 15, 20 years, was Iron Man.
Yeah.
And I've always been a big Robert Downey Jr. fan. And I think within Iron Man, he's got a wicked sense of humor. Guy doesn't take himself that seriously. And it was his, genius. He wasn't a demigod, whatever. It was his, brilliance that ultimately allowed him to be a superhero. So I think it was all of those things that were, kind of combined in one, and some pretty cool tech, right?
Right.
And then I think another one I have to mention is Black Panther. So Chadwick Boseman, and I loved that movie and him. I came to find out in 2020, like we all did, that he was fighting cancer and he passed away in 2020.
Yeah.
Loved him in Jackie Robinson, loved him in Black Panther. And that guy was a unbelievable actor, but a superhero, on the screen. And I think also if you read about his story and his battle with cancer and how he was helping other people, he was a superhero in real life. So those two superheroes are by far, stand out for me.
Very cool. Yeah, no, I like that. I like that. And I have read about, the inspiration, just how he was as a person, not just on screen. It was pretty impressive. So you always love to hear that. So,
yeah, unbelievable leader on the movie, like in the movie, right?
Yeah,
and I think he was definitely in real life as well.
Yeah, exactly. Well, very cool. And so we're going to take some questions here from the Floodgate. Looks like we do have some additional ones. I knew we were going to get this. So, right, you gotta have a Wisconsin guy. If John had give you a little bit of trouble with the Bears hat in the back, we knew that would come up. So I don't know if you want to taunt back at him, but
So here's the deal on that. First of all, Aaron Rodgers has he's gone off the reservation. He's lost it a little bit, and Justin Fields is, I think, a true superstar in the making. And by the way, the Bears can destroy any quarterback that comes to the franchise. If we would have drafted Patrick Mahomes, we would have destroyed his career. But I think Justin Fields is the guy, and on December 4th, we will crush the Packers for sure.
Very nice. I like it. Calling it out.
Well, Jackie,
looks like you remember she said she worked with you at Bar.
Jackie. Yes.
And it's a great, Jackie. I appreciate you posting this. What advice can you give reps and how to communicate up feedback to leaders like yourself of things that need improvement from a business standpoint or lack of communication from leadership? It's a great question, Jackie.
Yeah, and I adore Jackie. I remember Jackie extremely well, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, she's moving up in organizations. Jackie was having had lunch or dinner rather with Dustin Schmaltz about 2 months ago, so she knows what I'm talking about. But I think that's a tough one, right? And I think it kind of goes back to you were asking about leaders, and you hope leaders are approachable. What I would say, even if someone is not approachable, is you find somebody else that is approachable to get your point across. But probably the most important thing is the sincerity and being respectful. If you're a little bit tentative to go to a person to talk about things that you think need to change in the organization. And I think what's really important as well is I get a lot, hey, I'm calling on behalf of 45 people to tell you something that needs to change. And right away, I'm like, just tell me what you think. Don't be, the mouthpiece for 40 other people. So I think it's being sincere and it's being genuine with the feedback that you're providing. But I think the vast majority of people that are managers, leaders in positions of influence, let me kill this Teams call, positions of influence want to hear the feedback. So I don't be afraid to give the feedback. And if you feel like you're getting lip service, find somebody else in the organization that will basically try to address the concerns that you have. That's really important.
That's good. Yeah, that honesty, openness, and if and finding, because most people do care. I agree. You'll have some that don't and keep moving on if that's the case. But there is some within the organization. Great suggestions. This question from Ashley here. Who's been the biggest mentor in your career and one of the biggest lessons they taught you?
Boy, great question. That's a great question. And I've had so many mentors over the year. I'm afraid to pinpoint one. I look at Merit's CEO, Fred Lampropoulos, who is truly, the entrepreneur of entrepreneurs. He's a ethnographic genius. He's a brilliant man. And I have learned so much from Fred just through observing, through conversations. I'm a person where I'm more methodical with decision making, and Fred is the most decisive human being on the planet. If it needs to be done ultimately, we should do it immediately. And that was a very good lesson for me to learn and get pulled into that culture that is Merit, and also zero fear of failure, right? So it's okay to fail. We all read about that, but I don't think people take it to heart. And Fred really imparts that it's okay to fail. Just learn from it. And if you fail, move on fast. I will also say there was a gentleman at CR Bard, and I've, again, so many great mentors, Rob Hansen, who was such a servant leader and an amazing commercial person. I learned an immense number of lessons from Rob Hansen, who I think is VP of Commercial Excellence for Becton Dickinson now, just an incredible guy and man. And then one other person that comes to mind immediately, and not to skip over so many others, I was fortunate enough to play baseball at Northwestern. When I was a freshman, our senior catcher was Joe Girardi, who went on to be the manager for the New York Yankees for many years. I worship that guy because you learn about what hard work is watching a person like that. You learn about, again, servant leadership. He was more concerned. He was concerned about every single player on that team. He was concerned about the university, and just the competitive nature of that man when he walked in between the lines. So I've been so blessed with so many different leaders. So Ashley, I know that's a lot, and those are 3 different people, but I've learned a lot from them and many other people in my career and life.
Yeah, no, and I love they each had unique attributes that you learned that decision making, that work ethic, the different areas. That's really interesting. One last question here is there a go-to question that you found successful when vetting and hiring for your organization?
Yeah, well, if I know the person, because I truly believe that people are wired to be managing other people, to be leading other people. Some people, it's all about themselves. And then other people, they get their gratification through helping other people achieve their goals. And I've had lots of difficult conversations with people over the years where I'm like, I don't think you're wired to do this. Let's have the conversation type of thing. But I think it's, what are your motivations for becoming a leader in this organization, right? I've had people say to me point blank, I'm bored in what I'm doing right now. And I'm like, guess what? That's not the reason to go into a leadership role. Right. What are your motivations? Because to me, that's the most important thing. If you want to help others develop and grow and be a mentor, that's a good start. That's the great starting point. So that would be the question right there.
Awesome. Great. Well, guys, I really appreciate, Todd, for you getting on. Amy responded here that
there she is.
There she is, right? So figured I'd show that. So great comments there. But so Todd, thanks so much for sharing all of your leadership and experience. And I know there are a lot of people that have and will, because this will stay live and stay out there, gain from your insight. So thank you for taking the time to do it. We enjoyed having you.
Yeah, Joe, thank you. And thanks for not putting any of the nasty questions up there. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And look back next month. So thanks so much.
Thanks, Joe. Take care.